than others, but what I find interesting about this situation is, to the best of my knowledge, the bar owner, who may lose his license, has not himself been accused of any wrongdoing. I wouldn't have any sympathy for him, George, if he were serving to minors, for example, or if he was serving after hours, or above capacity, that kind of thing.
Right,
He hasn't
right.
been accused of any of that kind of thing.
The point is, he's not breaking the law.
No accusations that I know of about that, and yet he may still lose his license, and that's because of the behavior of his patrons. In some cases, after they've left his establishment, and this is what I find to be a little bit problematic, is because how much can we expect someone to control patrons after they've left? Oh, George, I own a retail store downtown, as you
Okay.
mentioned. Now, suppose I had customers that caused problems in my establishment, maybe a lot of shoplifting, or after they left my establishment, they, robbed someone on the street. Now, should my business be closed because of that? In a way, the city is creating incentives for bar owners not to cooperate with the police. In other words,
Yeah.
if I call the police because of a problem in my establishment, I run the risk of losing my business. So let's handle this in-house. And that may be problems. George, if you don't mind, one of the unspoken things here is Mr. Holmes' clientele. Mr. Holmes' clientele is largely young and black.
Okay.
Okay? And the city seems to be trying to create a policy of sorts to eliminate those type of bars. Another thing that people won't maybe say is that crimes are not committed at the same rate by every person. We know that. We know that children, for example, under the age of 5 don't commit crimes. We know that people in their 80s are less likely to commit violent crimes.
Wheelchair-bound people don't commit too many
Yeah.
robberies.
Is there a possibility that criminal activity is more likely in a place where there's young people? I would say that's probably,
No, I
most
think
people would recognize that. When you get in a little trouble is if you say, well, maybe is there more likelihood of gunshots happening where there's younger black people? And that's what the city won't say, but that is the policy they're trying to create, is to limit these bars that cater to black people, is what it seems like to me. George, I've been to a number of meetings at the city council where people are trying to get their liquor licenses. And it's almost laughable, some of the things that they have to say to get their license. For example, they will say, I will not be selling, or I will not be playing hip-hop music.
Yeah, I've heard that one, that's right.
What they seem to be trying to say, without saying it, is I will not be trying to cater to young black people. So there's this song and dance, and then some of them are maybe being dishonest, and then they go and cater to black people. Well, even so, last time I checked, serving alcohol to legal aged black people is not a crime. But the city seems
Right.
to be trying to make it so. So I think they're in essence trying to create a sort of a black prohibition here in Racine. Not making any problem. Even if the city were to shut down all these bars that they view as problematic and that may be problematic in and around the neighborhood, will this work? Now, those patrons who used to go to Bar A gets shut down. What are they going to do, George? Are they going to say, well, okay, they've shut down my bar, I guess it's now time to, stop drinking and start going more often to the library?
If the problem's anything, it's people that have lost the ability to control themselves and how to behave properly when they get under a little bit of alcohol.
Yeah, the problem is, in some cases, it's these bar patrons. Now,
It's the patrons, right?
right,
It's
and so
not the
what
bar.
would be the proper focus, in my view, is, well, if over a course of a number of weeks that there's a lot of problems in one particular area, I would think that is, in a way, sort of a useful law enforcement knowledge. You know that there's going to be problems here, so let's park, 2 or 3 squad cars outside and be prepared for when those problems come. Another thing that's interesting about this whole scenario is that the response is not, let's do something about these people who are committing crimes. There's almost no talk of, okay, let's get tough on these people who are assaulting one another or shooting at security guards. No mention of that. Let's throw them in jail. Let's teach them a lesson. That's not what's happening here. They're avoiding responsibility. Meanwhile, they're transferring the responsibility to an innocent party, which is the bar owner who hasn't committed any crime. I don't think that makes a lot of sense.
I think when the government comes in and they take a situation that may be less than optimum, and they say, we're going to correct that and make it optimum, constantly promising us a utopian life on this planet. We're going to bring the good life to you. And the result is, every time they go in to correct that, they just make it worse. They make it harder for people to survive. We spend more money on it, and it does. The government can only get out of the way. Now that's my little input onto this type of problem, Dennis, because what the government is looking at, they're looking at a problem here with unruliness outside of a bar. Number one, they're attacking the wrong point, like you point out. They're attacking the bar owner instead of looking at the constituents. And number two, they don't know what to do about the constituents. They're either afraid of them, or they know if we just arrest these guys, will anything get corrected?
You're clever, but if you don't mind, there's something that I find sort of interesting about the city's response here. I'm alleging that they are singling out young black people. Meanwhile, the city has its I think, affirmative action, I think some other committee, where they're now looking for increased powers to fine people who may discriminate in housing. So here,
right.
I find this fascinating that on the one hand, the city itself is discriminating in a way of their policy against young black people who might wish to have a beer. Meanwhile, they're ready to put the hammer down on somebody who in their view, is discriminating in the housing business.
The city can do it, but don't try and do it privately.
Exactly. The city is guilty of discrimination, in my view. Meanwhile, they're also the enforcement to put the hammer down on you or I if we're guilty of some discrimination.
Or that bartender.
Or that bartender.
If he would say
or
no.
If the bartender were to say, oh, you look like a problem group of black people, we're not going to serve you, they would be in a heap of trouble. But these are the kind of, this is why the city can't talk about this, because this is the policy they are in.
I mean, I live close to downtown, and I work and live in the inner city, and what I've seen of a lot of these rules and regulations, they aren't improving things. There's not a lot of valor or goal reaching by going in and necessarily controlling this type of thing. If people are able to take care of things themselves, but if the government is going to come in and try and solve these type of social problems, at least let's attack it at the right point. And then from there we can decide whether we're really going in the right direction. At any rate, thanks for listening in, and we will see you again at the next show whenever we see you. Thanks.